My bones ached as I climbed the front steps of my childhood home, the familiar creak of the third step echoing through the humid Atlanta evening. 23 years of birthdays had taught me not to expect much, but tonight felt different, heavier somehow. The scent of my mama's famous fried chicken wafted through the screen door, and for a split second, hope flickered in my chest like a dying candle. Please tell us in the comment where you are watching from. We want to know how far our story can travel. Please comment. Ashley, baby, you made it. Mama's voice carried that forced cheerfulness she used when she was about to disappoint me. I pushed through the door, my nursing scrubs still damp with sweat from a 12-hour shift at Grady Hospital. The living room was decorated with purple streamers and balloons, Whitney's favorite color, not mine. Happy birthday, sis. Whitney bounced over, her perfectly straightened hair catching the light. At 19, she still acted like the princess she'd always been treated as. Mama made your favorite. She paused, her smile faltering. I mean, she made chicken. Actually, baby, Mama interrupted, not meeting my eyes. Whitney's got that big presentation tomorrow for her sorority and she needs a good meal. You understand, right? You're older now, more mature. The words hit like a physical blow. More mature. Translation, you should be used to this by now. I stood there, still holding the grocery bag with ingredients for the birthday cake I'd planned to bake myself. Again. 23 years of birthday dinners that became family dinners. 23 years of being told I was mature enough to understand. The exhaustion behind my eyes suddenly crystallized into something sharper. Something that had been building for decades was about to break. You understand, right, Ashley? Daddy's voice drifted from his recliner, not even bothering to look up from his newspaper. The same newspaper he'd been reading every birthday when I walked through that door, hoping this time would be different. I worked a double shift, I said quietly, setting down my bag. I just wanted. Oh, don't be so dramatic, Whitney laughed, twirling in her new dress. A birthday gift to herself, apparently. It's just dinner. Besides, Mama's taking me to that new sushi place downtown tomorrow to celebrate my presentation. You love sushi, right? You can come if you're not working. The casual cruelty of it stole my breath. She didn't even realize what she'd said. Neither did they. That's what made it worse. The absolute thoughtlessness of it all. I watched Whitney parade around in a dress that probably cost more than my car payment, while I stood there in scrubs that smelled like disinfectant and other people's pain. Actually, I said, my voice steadier than I felt, I think I'll pass on dinner tonight. Mama finally looked up, her eyebrows raised in that expression I knew too well. The one that said I was being difficult. Ashley, don't start. You know how important this presentation is for Whitney's future. And my birthday? You can celebrate next weekend. We'll do something nice. Next weekend never came. It never had. I could feel something inside me shifting like tectonic plates moving deep underground before an earthquake. 23 years of next weekends had taught me that. I turned toward the stairs, my feet heavy with more than just exhaustion. My childhood bedroom looked exactly the same as the day I'd left for college 5 years ago. Pink walls that Whitney had picked out when we shared the room, before she got her own big girl room at age 12. I sat on the narrow twin bed, staring at my reflection in the mirror that still had cheerleading photos tucked into the frame. All of Whitney, of course. The grocery bag sat on my dresser like evidence of my own foolishness. Betty Crocker cake mix, vanilla frosting, 24 candles because I'd learned to buy my own. The ritual of making my own birthday cake had become as familiar as breathing. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through Facebook, watching everyone else's birthday celebrations flash by in an endless stream of joy I'd never known. My thumb hovered over the camera icon. On impulse, I snapped a photo of the sad little grocery bag against the backdrop of my childhood prison. Then I opened my laptop and started typing. The real estate website loaded slowly on our ancient Wi-Fi. I'd been saving every penny from my nursing job, living at home to build up enough for a down payment. Originally, it was supposed to be for an apartment. But sitting there, listening to Whitney's laughter echo up the stairs while my parents fussed over her presentation, something shifted. Why an apartment? Why not a house? Why not something they could never take away from me, never dismiss, never overlook? My fingers moved across the keyboard with sudden purpose, searching for houses outside the city. Places where birthdays might actually matter. Where I might actually matter. The first listing that caught my eye was a small craftsman bungalow in Decatur. 3 bedrooms, hardwood floors, and a front porch that looked like it was made for celebration. The house was perfect in its imperfection. Peeling paint on the shutters, a garden that needed love, a mailbox that tilted slightly to the left like it was waving hello. I stood on that front porch the next morning, my real estate agent rambling about square footage and property taxes, but all I could hear was possibility. The sellers are motivated, Diane explained, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her clipboard. It's been on the market for 3 months. They're willing to negotiate. I walked through rooms that smelled like fresh possibility instead of old disappointments. The kitchen had yellow walls that seemed to hold sunshine, and the master bedroom had windows that looked out onto a backyard big enough for a garden party. My garden party. My birthday party. I'll take it, I said before I could talk myself out of it. Diane blinked. Don't you want to think about it? Look at a few more properties. Your parents might want to see it first. My parents don't get a vote, I said, the words feeling foreign and powerful in my mouth. How quickly can we close? Back home that evening, I said nothing about the house. I sat through another dinner where Whitney dominated the conversation with sorority gossip while my parents hung on every word. I washed dishes while they planned Whitney's future, discussed her classes, her boyfriends, her dreams. When Whitney mentioned needing money for new textbooks, Daddy immediately pulled out his wallet. What about you, Ashley? He asked absently, almost as an afterthought. Everything good at the hospital? Everything's about to be perfect, I said, but he'd already turned back to Whitney. 2 weeks later, I held the keys to my new life in my palm. The house was mine. Completely, legally, undeniably mine. The closing took place on a Tuesday morning while my family thought I was at work. I signed paper after paper, my hand cramping with the repetition of my own signature. My name over and over, claiming ownership of something that was finally, completely mine. The lawyer, Mr. Robinson, smiled warmly as he handed me the keys. Congratulations, Miss Washington. You're officially a homeowner. I drove straight to my new house, pulling into the driveway that was mine, walking up to the door that was mine, turning the key in the lock that was mine. The empty rooms echoed with potential, and for the first time in my life I felt like I could breathe fully. I spent the afternoon measuring windows for curtains and planning where furniture would go. In the largest bedroom, I envisioned a queen-size bed. My own bed, not the twin I'd been relegated to while Whitney got the canopy bed she'd begged for at 16. The kitchen would have a proper dining table where I could host birthday dinners for people who actually wanted to celebrate me. My phone buzzed with a text from Mama. Working late again? Whitney made Dean's List. Come home for dinner to celebrate. I stared at the message, thumb hovering over the keyboard. For 23 years, I would have dropped everything, driven home, and pretended to be happy about Whitney's latest achievement while my own accomplishments went unnoticed. My nursing degree, my job saving lives, my financial responsibility, none of it had ever warranted a celebration dinner. Instead, I typed back, "Congratulations to Whitney. I'm celebrating something of my own tonight." I didn't elaborate. Let them wonder. Let them ask questions for once instead of assuming I'd always be there, always understanding, always mature enough to be ignored. The moving truck would come tomorrow. The moving process was surprisingly simple when you realized how little of your childhood home actually belonged to you. 1 bedroom's worth of belongings, mostly clothes and books, fit into my Honda Civic with room to spare. I'd bought all my own furniture over the years. A small dresser, a desk, a reading chair that Whitney had claimed was too ugly for the main house. As I loaded the last box into my car, Whitney appeared in the driveway, her hair in hot rollers and her face confused. "Where are you going with all that stuff?" "I'm moving out." She laughed, that tinkling sound that had always made our parents smile. "Moving out? Into what? A studio apartment? Ashley, you can barely afford your car payment." I could have corrected her. Could have explained about the savings account they'd never bothered to ask about, the overtime shifts I'd worked while she partied through college, the financial planning I'd done while they assumed I was irresponsible. Dad, I just smiled. "I'll send you my new address." Mama came out as I was backing down the driveway, worry creasing her features for perhaps the first time in my adult life. "Ashley, what's all this about? You didn't say anything about moving out." "I didn't say anything about a lot of things, Mama. But where will you go? You can't just..." "I'm 23 years old," I interrupted, surprised by the steadiness in my own voice. "I've been taking care of myself for years. Now I'm just doing it somewhere that feels like home." The drive to Decatur felt like driving toward sunrise. Every mile between my old life and my new one felt like shedding skin I'd outgrown years ago. When I pulled into my driveway, the late afternoon sun was painting the front porch golden. I had 3 days before my official housewarming party. 3 days to make this house look like the celebration I'd always deserved. Target had never seen me spend so much money so joyfully. String lights for the front porch, colorful throw pillows for the living room, framed photos of my college friends who'd always wondered why I never had birthday parties. I bought plants for the kitchen windowsill and a welcome mat that said, "Home Sweet Home," in cheerful yellow letters. The grocery store was next. I filled my cart with ingredients for a birthday feast. Not just cake but everything I'd ever wanted at a birthday dinner. Seafood pasta, garlic bread, a chocolate cake from the bakery that looked like something from a magazine. Wine that cost more than I'd usually spend on groceries for a week. My college roommate, Shanice, was the first to arrive Friday evening, carrying flowers and wearing the biggest smile I'd ever seen. "Girl, this house is gorgeous," she squealed, spinning in my living room. "And it's all yours? How did you manage this without saying anything?" "I've been saving for a while," I said, not mentioning that my family still had no idea where I was living. I wanted it to be a surprise. Isaiah and Tanya arrived next, followed by 3 other friends from nursing school. Soon my living room was filled with laughter and conversation that centered around me. My achievements, my new house, my future plans. For the first time in my life, I was the guest of honor at my own party. "We need pictures," Shanice declared, pulling out her phone. "Ashley, sit on your porch steps. I want to get the house in the background." As she snapped photos, I felt something I'd never experienced before. Pride. Not quiet satisfaction or grateful acceptance, but actual, glowing pride in what I'd accomplished. "Post these everywhere," I told her. "I want the world to see." I crafted the Facebook post carefully, sitting at my new kitchen table with a glass of wine and a sense of purpose I'd never felt before. The photos Shanice had taken showed me glowing with happiness on my front porch, surrounded by friends who'd driven 40 minutes just to celebrate me. The caption wrote itself. "Finally found a family that actually celebrates me. #new house, #birthday, #blessed, #home." I tagged everyone who'd come to the party and added location details that would make it clear this wasn't just any house. This was MY House. Then I hit share and closed my laptop. Within an hour, my phone was buzzing constantly. Comments were pouring in from people I hadn't spoken to in years, college friends, work colleagues, high school classmates I'd almost forgotten about. "Ashley, you bought a house. Girl, you're living the dream. Wait, when was your birthday? I had no idea. This is incredible. Your parents must be so proud." That last comment made my stomach twist. My parents didn't even know about the house yet. They probably didn't even realize I'd moved out, since they hadn't called or texted once since I'd left 3 days ago. But then my phone rang. It was my grandmother, Big Mama, her voice sharp with concern. "Ashley, baby, I just saw your post on the Facebook. What do you mean, finally found a family that celebrates you? What's going on over there?" I closed my eyes, suddenly realizing what I'd unleashed. "Big Mama, And when was your birthday, child? Nobody told me it was your birthday." The hurt in her voice was like a knife in my chest. Big Mama, who'd sent cards and calls for Whitney's every achievement, had no idea when my birthday was because my own parents had never made it worth remembering. "It was last week, Big Mama." The silence that followed was deafening. Big Mama's call was just the beginning. My phone buzzed with notifications throughout the night as family members who'd been tagged in group photos or tagged by friends began to piece together the truth. Aunt Rosa was the first to comment directly on my post. "Honey, I am shook. I always suspected your parents favored Whitney, but I had no idea it was this bad. Why didn't you tell us they never celebrated your birthday? We've been sending cards to the wrong address for years because we thought you still lived at home and were happy there." The comment opened floodgates. My cousin Maya responded immediately. "Wait. You mean Uncle James and Aunt Patricia haven't been celebrating Ashley's birthday? For how long?" Then my high school friend Deshawn chimed in. "Bro, now everything makes sense. I always wondered why Ashley never had birthday parties. We thought you just didn't like celebrating, but your parents literally never threw you any." The comments kept coming, each one revealing how my family's neglect had been invisible to everyone else because they'd all assumed my parents were treating me the same way they treated Whitney. Relatives began sharing their own observations, how they'd always wondered why I seemed so quiet at family gatherings, why I never seemed excited about holidays, why I'd started declining invitations to family events. My phone rang again. This time it was my Uncle David, Big Mama's eldest son and the family patriarch. "Ashley, I need you to explain this post to me very slowly," he said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that made everyone in our family straighten up and listen. "Are you telling me that James and Patricia have been ignoring your birthday for years?" "Uncle David, I don't want to cause trouble." "How many years, Ashley?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. I could lie, minimize, make excuses like I always had. Or I could tell the truth. "All of them," I whispered. "All 23 years. Uncle David's silence was more terrifying than yelling would have been. I could hear him breathing heavily through the phone, and I knew that sound meant trouble for someone. But for the first time in my life, it wasn't going to be me. "I'm calling your grandmother," he said finally. "And then I'm calling your father. This is unacceptable." After he hung up, the comments on my post had multiplied exponentially. My family's group chat was apparently exploding with screenshots and questions. My work friends were expressing shock and offering support. Even neighbors from my childhood street were commenting that they'd always wondered why they never saw birthday decorations or party preparations for me. But it was my grandfather's comment that stopped everything cold. "This is disgusting behavior from people who call themselves parents. Patricia and James Washington, you should be ashamed of yourselves. 23 years of ignoring your daughter's birthday while treating your other daughter like a princess? This is not how I raised my son. Ashley, baby girl, I am so sorry we didn't know. We failed you too." The comment had over 100 likes within minutes. Family members were sharing my post with their own long comments about how they'd always suspected something was wrong but hadn't wanted to interfere in my parents' business. The picture they painted was damning: years of family gatherings where I'd seemed withdrawn, holidays where I'd left early, celebrations where I'd looked more like an outsider than a family member. My phone rang. It was Mama. "Ashley Washington, what have you done?" she hissed before I could even say hello. "The whole family is calling here asking questions. Your grandfather is talking about changing his will, and Whitney is crying because people are saying terrible things about us on Facebook. I bought a house, Mama. I posted pictures of my housewarming party. That's what I did. You made us look like terrible parents." The irony wasn't lost on me. Did I, Mama? Or did I just show people what you've been doing for 23 years? The doorbell rang as I was trying to process my mother's words. Through the window, I saw Big Mama's ancient Cadillac parked in my driveway, and my heart nearly stopped. She'd driven 40 miles to see me, something she rarely did anymore at 82. "Mama, I have to go. Big Mama's here." "Don't you hang up this phone, Ashley." I hung up and opened my front door to find Big Mama standing on my porch, her purse clutched tightly in her arthritis-gnarled hands and her mouth set in the thin line that meant someone was about to get the talking to of their life. "Big Mama, you didn't need to drive all this way. Hush, child, and let me see this house." She pushed past me with surprising strength, her eyes taking in every detail of my living room. "Lord have mercy. Look at this place. You did this all by yourself." "Yes, ma'am." She nodded slowly, settling into my reading chair like she belonged there. "Now tell me the truth. All of it. How long have they been treating you like you don't matter?" The story poured out of me like water from a broken dam. 23 years of forgotten birthdays, dismissed achievements, and being told I was mature enough to understand, while Whitney got everything she wanted. I told her about working double shifts to buy my own birthday cake, about missing my high school graduation party because Whitney had a cheerleading competition, about how I'd learned not to expect presents because the disappointment hurt too much. Big Mama's face grew darker with each revelation, her jaw tightening until I was afraid she might crack her teeth. "And they never told any of us," she said finally. "We've been sending birthday cards to that house for years, thinking they were celebrating you properly. Your mama would call and tell us you were doing fine, and we believed her. I didn't want to cause problems." "Baby girl, you didn't cause anything. This problem was already there, festering like an infection. You just brought it to light." She pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. "I'm calling your grandfather. It's time the whole family knew exactly what James and Patricia Washington have been doing to our grandbaby." By Sunday morning, my social media post had become the center of a family-wide reckoning. The comments had reached over 800, with relatives I hadn't seen in years expressing shock, outrage, and support. My cousin's wife, who was a social worker, had written a particularly damning analysis of emotional neglect that was being shared throughout the family network. But it was my grandfather's announcement that sent shockwaves through everything. After much consideration and prayer, I am making changes to my will. James and Patricia Washington are being removed as beneficiaries due to their failure to properly love and support all of their children. Ashley will receive their portion, plus an additional inheritance specifically for her, because at least someone in this family deserves to be celebrated. This decision is final. The post had over 300 reactions within an hour. My phone hadn't stopped ringing with calls from relatives, friends, and even family friends who'd seen the drama unfold online. The consensus was clear. My parents had been exposed as neglectful, and the family was rallying around me in a way I'd never experienced. At noon, my parents finally arrived at my house. I watched from my kitchen window as they sat in their car for several minutes, probably arguing about what to say. Whitney wasn't with them, which told me everything I needed to know about where their priorities still lay. When I opened the door, Mama's eyes were red with tears, and Daddy looked older than I'd ever seen him. "We need to talk," he said quietly. I led them to my living room, where they perched uncomfortably on my couch like visitors in a foreign country. The silence stretched between us, heavy with 23 years of unspoken truths. "We didn't realize," Mama began, but I held up my hand. "Yes, you did," I said. "You knew exactly what you were doing. The question is why?" The conversation that followed was the first honest one I'd ever had with my parents. Through tears and denials and eventual grudging admissions, the truth emerged. Whitney had been their miracle baby, after years of trying for another child, and I'd become an afterthought in their overwhelming focus on her. They'd convinced themselves that I was independent and didn't need as much attention, when really they'd just found it easier to ignore me. "But you're so successful," Mama said, as if my achievements justified their neglect. "You became a nurse, you bought this house. You turned out fine." "I turned out fine despite you, not because of you," I replied. "And I'm done pretending that was okay." They left without really apologizing, still making excuses and asking me to take down the post that had embarrassed them. I watched their car disappear down my street and felt something I'd never experienced before: complete, total relief. My phone buzzed with a text from Big Mama. "Family dinner next Sunday. Your house. I'm bringing birthday cake and everyone who should have been celebrating you all these years. It's time to make up for lost time." The message was followed by a string of responses from aunts, uncles, and cousins, all confirming their attendance at what would be my first real birthday party in 23 years. I walked out onto my front porch and looked at the house that was mine, in the neighborhood where I was building new traditions, surrounded by people who saw my worth. The late afternoon sun painted everything golden, and for the first time in my life I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. My phone buzzed again. Whitney's name flashed on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Whatever she had to say could wait. Right now, I had a birthday party to plan. A real one with people who actually wanted to celebrate me. Finally, I was free. So what do you think? Was I completely in the right, or did I throw away their family over pride? I want to hear every perspective in the comments below. And if you can't get enough of these intense family showdowns, make sure you're subscribed. I've got stories that'll make this one look tame.